welcome to the No Cricket Podcast. I'm Anurag.
And this is Saurabh.
We're commentators at CricBuzz.
So we watch a lot of live cricket.
And that means when everyone's asleep at 3 a.m.,
We're watching cricket.
when it's a Friday evening and you're at the bar,
We're watching cricket.
and when you're stuck in rush hour traffic on Monday morning.
We're watching cricket again.
So naturally, we have a lot of interesting conversations about cricket.
So we thought, why not record them in front of a camera and put them into the wide ocean that is the internet?
And that's exactly what we've done.
This is the No Cricket Podcast where we share our 2 cents about the sport that we love so much.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the No Cricket Podcast. It's been a while since we've done this, but we are back. And guess who's also back? South Africa are into the World Test Championship final. That's the big news as we head into the new year. Speaking of New Year, Happy New Year to all of you watching this. We hope you had a great 2024 and wish you a great 2025. And as usual, it's me and Saurabh here. Saurabh, see South Africa versus Pakistan. What a win that was for South Africa just a couple of days ago. Winning that nail biter of a game. I think you covered that game, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a thrilling game, and South Africa at the end they just won the tough moments and won the important moments to qualify, and like they become the first team to qualify. So congratulations to South Africa. And I think it was a very fair contest, a very even contest between bat and ball, a good sporty pitch, and both teams had the right kind of resources for that kind of pitch where some swing bowling was being rewarded, seam bowling was being rewarded. At the end of the day, I think it's just it was a battle of two teams that have had a tendency to crumble under pressure. But in the end, South Africa, as they have often done in the past, did not choke on this occasion and they got through. What were your thoughts on this first test?
Yeah, it was really exciting. I think heading into the game as well, South Africa were just under that little bit of added pressure because I mean they knew that if they'd win this, they'd obviously go straight into the World Test Championship final. And they've done it. I mean, they were absolutely under the pump when they on that last day. 8 wickets down, needing what they needed 50, 60 odd runs, I think. And that last partnership to get them through, it was an absolute nail bite. I think Test cricket did better. It was great for the game to witness a game like that. And we've got a new finalist in the World Test Championship.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think those last 1 hour actually defined how Pakistan's year has been as well. Because if you think about it, they of course won the series against England at home, but their two match winners, which is Sajid Khan and Oman Ali, they weren't there out here. So this was pretty much the team that lost at home against Bangladesh and then had that humiliating first test defeat against England. So when the pressure was on them, a lot of those old wounds came back to fester, and the pressure was felt by the likes of Naseem, Kuram Shahzad, Babar, Rizwan, and like the result showed at the end of the day. I think it's just South Africa came through in a tight contest and they're through to the World Test Championship final. But Anurag, do you think that South Africa got a bit lucky with the way the schedule has worked in their favor?
Oh yes, absolutely. So if you look closely at that World Test Championship cycle, right, the 23 to 25 cycle, South Africa have played the least amount of matches, and the way their tours have been scheduled, they have definitely gotten a bit lucky in the sense that they haven't faced some of the better sides in Test cricket. For instance, their only away tours have been to New Zealand early in the year, where they sent that very what do you call it, a very light squad without all their mainstays. And I mean that's an absolutely different debate about how T20 cricket sort of took precedence there with all of their main players going and playing the SA20 instead of playing for the Test team. But yeah, that was a tour to New Zealand they had early in the year, and then I think they went down to Bangladesh, I think. And um, and yeah, the big factor here is in the entire cycle they did not face England and Australia at all, and they faced India at home right at the beginning of the cycle. So I mean, we all know how good South Africa are at home. They drew that series, I think, 1-1. But yeah, they didn't face either of England or Australia, who were sort of the better teams in Test cricket at the moment.
Well, yeah, just to add on those points. So, South Africa in this Test Championship cycle are going to be playing the least amount of matches, which is 12 tests. And even the likes of Bangladesh and West Indies are going to be playing, I think, one or two tests more than them in this cycle. And the biggest advantage they got was not playing the traditional big three, as they call it. So all the past finalists, they played at least two of the big three, and one of them has been an away tour. In this case, South Africa got extremely lucky that their only challenge against the big three was India on their own patch, and they never played Australia or England. So a little bit of the way scheduling has worked, and also another interesting thing is because South Africa are in this conundrum of how much importance to give to Test cricket. They haven't had long Test series, which we see in India, in Australia, and England, where 4 and 5 match series are done. So South Africa tend to play only 2 match Test series. In fact, in their whole cycle, they're only playing 2 match Test series, home or away. And I think the last time they played a 3 match test series was back in 2021 when India traveled. So a little bit of the preference towards T20 cricket, which was very evident earlier in the year as well, has just worked in their favor. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. The scheduling has definitely worked in their favor, but I don't think we should discredit them for their achievement because they really are a really, really good test team. Especially at home, we've known South Africa traditionally has been a team that's dominated in home conditions. And here's another thing that surprised me. Yes, they made it to the final this year in this WTC cycle, but they were also third in the last WTC cycle with India and Australia at the top. South Africa were third, and I didn't know this until I looked it up. So they've been fairly consistent over the last 3 or 4 years in Test cricket, and I think now they're sort of finally getting the results as well, making it to the final.
Well, yeah, that's actually pretty interesting to see because South Africa have been in a sort of transitional phase themselves, where you had Dean Elgar moving out. You've had a bit of a mess up with like so many of their players being three format players. So they aren't necessarily always being able to get a very defined test 11 where sometimes you have guys being available to be selected, sometimes it's not. The likes of Henrik Klassen, what would you do with him? He was tried in Australia, he was tried in a few series here and there, and now I think finally they've decided that it's better to make him only a white ball player. So
No, no, interesting
that's
point about that. Heinrich Klaassen actually retired from Test cricket. So I think he solved that problem for them. You saw Quinton de Kock as well, sort of retire from Test cricket quite early in his career. That's obviously a different debate about sort of players prioritizing T20 cricket. I mean, we keep going back to the same thing. It shows you how big an issue it is in today's cricketing landscape. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention that Heinrich Klaassen retired from Test cricket after playing, I think, just a handful of tests. So that's another very interesting thing. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
But yeah, I think it's a little too premature and a bit too juvenile for us to be saying that South Africa qualifying for the WTC final is purely luck because I think a lot of factors went in their favor and they did a lot of things right as well. So, for instance,
Absolutely.
one of them being persisting with their players. So, David Bedingham and Tristan Stubbs. Two of these players, they made their debut against India in the first series of this cycle for them. And neither of them got any real runs. Bedingham got a 50, but he scored 74 runs, which included that 50. Stubbs made his debut in the second test, and I think he had single digit scores in both innings. So it would have been very tempting for South Africa to move away from them and like try out new players. But they persisted with them. They picked them for Bangladesh. They picked them for West Indies. And guess what? Guess who are the two highest run getters for South Africa in this cycle? It is David Bedingham and Tristan Stubbs. And another factor that's really worked in their favor is giving the captaincy to Temba Bavuma. So he's been in a bit of a hot potato with the captaincy situation in white ball and red ball. Sometimes he's captain, sometimes it's Aiden Barkram, sometimes randomly you see Hendrik Klassen captaining. So and Temba Bavuma is the easiest scapegoat per se. And it would have been very tempting because if you remember, he did not play the test series against Bangladesh due to injury. And it was Aiden Barkram who captained them, and he led them finally to a 2-0 series win. So it would have been very tempting to chuck Bavuma out of the team because he wasn't having a great run with the bat either way. But persisting with him as captain, that's made the difference. So in 8 tests so far, Temba Bavuma has yet to lose a test match as captain. So he's won 7 of them and he's drawn one. And a bit about his average. So as captain, his average goes up to 57 compared to his normal batting average, which is about 37.4. So he clearly enjoys that extra pressure of being captain. And even in the Sri Lanka series, he was the man of the series. So captaincy's worked out well. And another final point of this is this could be purely luck, but out of the 8 tosses, Temba Bavuma has won 7. And we all know tosses could be very important in Test cricket. So something is going right with this captaincy choice. What do you think? What do you think are the reasons South Africa have done well in this cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting point you made initially about David Bedingham and Tristan Stubbs. So in this WTC cycle, like you correctly mentioned, David Bedingham is the leading run scorer. And once he made his debut again, like you said, right at the beginning of the cycle against India. And since then, they've persisted with him, and he's played all of the 11 Test matches they've played so far. And this sort of brings me to another point about South Africa. It's been well recorded that South Africa went through a massive transition a few years ago, and how they struggled for players and struggled for players and results in that interim. But you look at this current team, and you see players like David Bedingham, you see players like Tony DeZorzi, you see players like Dane Patterson. These are all, the current mainstays. These are players who come with rich first class experience. These are players who they're seasoned. They've played a lot of first class cricket. They've been tried and tested, and they're they're hardened with all of this experience. And now, and when they make their debuts, they're ready. When they come onto the international stage, they're ready to take on international cricket. You could also see that with Corbin Bosch, who made his debut in this Pakistan game. He looked fantastic. He bowled 140 odd and also batted brilliantly. So I think that sort of leads me to South Africa's domestic structure, which seems to be quite strong compared to the other nations. Some of the other nations. I know we've previously spoken about the West Indies and how they've struggled. We've also touched upon Sri Lanka as well. I think the reason South Africa are succeeding while some of these other countries aren't can be attributed to their domestic structure. Like I said, all of these players, they played a sizable amount of first class cricket before they made their international debuts. Um, Again, just to speak about David Bedingham once more, he made his debut age 29. He played quite a lot of. He also played quite a lot of county cricket for Durham. And by the time he made his international debut, he'd nearly played 100 first class games. And the same goes for somebody like Tony DeZorzi. He made his debut when he was 26, I think. Also played a lot of first class cricket. Also played a lot of South Africa A cricket. Dane Patterson only played a handful of test matches. He's age 30, 34, 35, something like that. Again, played tons of first class cricket. So you compare this to even a country like Australia. You just saw someone like Sam Constance making their debut. They were scrambling when David Warner retired. They were scrambling to find an opener. They pushed McSweeney up, didn't work. Now they got Constance, just played 11 first class matches. So even compared to a nation like Australia, which has a settled and long, a domestic structure which has a rich history and all of that well established structure, I think South Africa is one of the strongest domestic structures in world cricket at the moment. And another thing is obviously a lot of their players go out and play county cricket. We've known it to be not so good for South African cricket before, but now with the end of Kolpak and all of that, I think a lot of their players make use and jump back to that experience. I think I can also think of Ian Mulder. He hasn't played much recently, but he's also another player that plays quite a bit of county cricket, and he's been pretty good for them in that all-rounder role. So I think South Africa have, to add to that, South Africa have assembled a great team, a great squad, I'd say, because it's not just their starting 11, which looks quite strong, but it's, that 14, 15, 16 as well that looks really, really good. Um, so if you just go down that order, right, you have experience in Aiden Markram and Temba Bavuma in the batting order, and obviously David Bedingham as well. Maybe not at the international level, but a lot of experience. And then you've got youngsters like Tristan Stubbs, Ryan Rickleton, all of them stepping up to the plate as well. They've got some flair. And when you go, I think and their real strength, I think, lies in their bowling attack. You've got right now, you've got Rabada, you've got Janssen and Patterson leading the attack. But also look at the backup they've got. They've got Andrik Nokia sitting there. They've got Lungi Ngidi, and they've who else have they got? And they've got
Dante
Corbin Bosch as
Burger,
well now.
Gerald Coetzee.
Yeah, Jared Kotsia as well, another great fast bowler. And then they have a reliable spinner in Keshav Maharaj. So I think it's a very well-rounded team. This got a lot of their bases covered. And one more point that I feel is very interesting and important is that all of their bowlers are quite capable with the bat. We saw that again, obviously, come very, very handy against Pakistan. But I think they bat right down to 11. Kagiso Rabada obviously has quite a lot of, I feel, unrealized potential with the bat. So I think that's another great thing that works in their favor and what makes them such a great team.
Well, absolutely. I think the point that you mentioned, it's the sum of the parts. And what makes South Africa good, or like what's worked very well for them in this cycle, is how they've utilized their squad strength and how they've utilized different players doing different roles. So just if you think back, Nandre Berger, I don't think he's played a significant part in this cycle, but he played the couple of tests in West Indies, and he performed well there. When they went to Bangladesh, they got Senuran Muthuswamy back, and he got amongst the wickets. And it's the same with Vian Mulder, with Corbin Bosch. Corbin Bosch, out of the blue, pretty much it seems like he got a debut. But it is just that there is some foresight, there is a thought process behind why they're picking certain players for certain conditions, and it's worked out. And even the New Zealand tour, which is divided cricket opinion, because in the start of the year, South Africa chose to send a second string side to New Zealand because they prioritized their SA T20. And you had a lot of lesser known, you had multiple debutants coming in New Zealand, but two of the shining lights for them through that series has been David Bedingham and Patterson. Both of those guys went to New Zealand, performed, and then South Africa have found a way to get them into their test setup and provided a role for them. So I think just utilization of the squad is something that South Africa have done very well, although they might have limited quality or resources compared to the bigger nations like India or Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, this well-roundedness and the way the South African team performs, I feel like they're a very cohesive unit. You spoke about Temba Bavuma, being the leader of the side. I think just like you said, he's done a great job. It seems like a happy team when you look at it from the outside. That's not always been the case with South African sides. In the recent past, there's been a lot of turmoil with their board and everything. um, but they just look a lot more settled and a lot more at ease now, and I think that's also a major contributor in their success.
Yeah, I think it's just the joy of winning, and that's what's returned to South Africa. They've had a fantastic 2024 because it's also to do with the kind of opposition they played, but you still have to go there and get those results. Tougher teams have gone and struggled in Bangladesh. Some teams have gone and struggled in West Indies, but South Africa went there and got the results. So I think it's well deserved. And wins just become a lucky habit. Sorry, wins just become a happy habit. So once you get a few wins, you just pile on that momentum, and that's what's got them to the position that they are. And now, who's to say that the World Test Championship isn't theirs? It just needs one more good game of Test cricket for South Africa to get there.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to look ahead and look at the actual World Test Championship final. It's going to be played at the Oval, right, this time around, or is it going to be at Lords?
I think it's the Oval.
It's the Oval, yeah. I mean, in either case, do you think South Africa have got what it takes to win in England? So just taking a look at, I mean, they're most likely going to face Australia now, given how the Border Gavaskar Trophy is going. Slim chance for India and an even slimmer one for Sri Lanka, but I think in all probability they'll be facing Australia in that World Test Championship final. Do you think South Africa have got what it takes to win against an Australian side in English conditions?
I think it's never a question of talent or never a question of skill with South Africa because they have some of the best seam bowling and like fast bowling options out there. So on just the bowling parameter, they can surely match Australia, and their batters have stepped up as well. So you can expect someone like Markram or Bavuma or Bedingham to get you those big runs, and this is where the county experience of a few of those players might come in handy as well. With South Africa, it's purely a battle of mentality. If they can rise up to the occasion, they've had this unfortunate tag of being chokers. They're throwing that away to a certain extent across formats. Even if you look at the T20 World Cup and how they got through a lot of tight games, and even in this cycle, this game against Pakistan, an older South Africa team could have very easily lost. So they're throwing away that tag of being a choker. It's just can they do it on the big stage? That's all. That's the question.
So it looks like we've got a very interesting World Test Championship final coming up this June. Like we alluded to earlier, likely South Africa versus Australia. As fans of Indian cricket, we'd like to see India there, but a lot of that depends on how this last test against Australia goes. Anyway, that's all we've got for you today. Do subscribe to the No Cricket podcast. We'll be coming out with more episodes very shortly. We hope you enjoyed that one. Thanks for watching.